Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick and this is our first look at the Under Armour Velociti Elite 2. So the Under Armour Velociti Elite 2 is obviously the successor to the Velociti Elite 1. It's Under Armour's top carbon plate racing shoe, and the shoe has seen a significant overhaul for the second version with a redesigned midsole. It costs £225 in the UK, $250 in the US. It weighs in at 258 grams or 9.1 ounces in my UK size 9, which is pretty heavy for a super shoe and a jump in weight on the first version of the shoe. And it's listed as having an 8mm drop on the Under Armour website. Interestingly, I think I've seen some reviews online, early reviews of the shoe, saying it's more like a 2mm drop, and as you can see, it does look pretty level right there until you get to the very end of the shoe where there is that very sharp toe spring, so it might depend on exactly where you measure it, but on my first run today it did feel like quite a low drop shoe, I will say that. So the big update with the second version of the shoe is you've got a lot more of the bio-based Peba-based foam in the midsole, where the first version just had a little bit less basically. You've got a big chunk of it, and there's certainly more of it under the forefoot in particular. It is still a dual density midsole though, with Under Armour's flow foam beneath, and that flow foam also acts as the outsole of the shoe. It's a pretty durable material, it creates that dual density effect with the slightly bouncier, more resilient layer on the top of it. You have a full length carbon plate running in between the two layers as you expect. You've got a midsole cut out now to reduce weight a little bit, which shows off the plate in the midsole. Then you've got a Warp 2.0 upper. This is a very nice breathable upper. It's a really good looking shoe all around, I think we can say that straight away. Haven't got too much padding or heel structure, but in general the way the upper wraps the foot creates a nice secure hold for fast running.
So when it comes to size, I've just run in a UK 8.5, which is my regular running shoe size in Under Armour shoes. And I would say the Velociti 2 here, they fit really nicely. I've got a good hold in the heel. They kind of hug around the back of the heel nicely. Managed to get pretty good lockdown across the top of the midfoot. I think you have to sort of buckle the laces down quite tight to do that. There is quite a lot of sort of room across that midfoot. One thing I did find is the tongues are very narrow, so you don't quite get that kind of full wrapped feel that you might do with some race shoes. And I think maybe that kind of accounts for some of the sort of slight kind of insecurity there in the midfoot. And you can sort of see the gaps in my socks down either side. It's a little bit odd. They just basically haven't made the tongues quite wide enough, which is an interesting one. Otherwise though, plenty roomy in the toe box, lots of wiggle room. I think a really good amount of room towards the end of the toes. They are arguably a little bit long, a bit longer than some other kind of race shoes, but I never had any problems with them in that run at all, in that first run. And overall, I think I would recommend going true to size in these shoes.
When it comes to the fit, I have a UK 9, which is a US 10. It's the same size I had in the first version of the shoe, and I would say it is the right size for me to go for. That is my normal running shoe size. I'm in between a US 9.5 and a 10. Basically, I have one foot that's probably more of a 9.5 and one more of a 10, and that's more or less exactly what I have with the shoe. I've got a bit more room on my left side, but I was happy with the fit. Going for my normal size there, that's what I'd recommend. Got quite a nice upper all round, I'd say. It holds the foot securely without any hot spots or rubbing, and it doesn't feel too loose in any area. So yeah, all round I was very happy in my normal running shoe size.
The fit for me in the Velociti Elite 2, I'm a size 8 in the UK, this is a size 8. It was fine for me, but I don't normally want a lot of space before my big toe. I think for some people you might want to size up half a size in this shoe just because it's a little bit restrictive in the forefoot, and I know some people won't like that. The front of the shoe is actually surprisingly wide. There seems to be a lot of space in the forefoot to move your feet around, but it's quite a low top shoe, so I did feel that over my toes I could feel the top of the shoe sort of pressing on them, which by going up half size you might alleviate that a little bit. I didn't have any problems with it. It was perfectly comfortable, but I do think that for some people it might just be a little bit on the tight side, so I'd go up half size in this.
Hello, welcome to very sunny London. I'm down the track to do my first run in the Under Armour Flow Velociti Elite 2. Just jogged here along the road. I'm now going to do a 10 times 400 metre session, running 75 seconds for the reps or so with 200 metre jog recovery. First bit of speed work since the London Marathon, so it's been 2.5 weeks. So I'm going to blow some cobwebs away today, hopefully. It might be a bit painful. Looking forward to trying out the shoes and running fast for the first time in a while. So I'm all done. That was good fun. Great fun to be back on the track and running quickly again. It was a bit of an effort by the end, starting to feel it a bit just with raising my heart rate for the first time in 2.5 weeks, but everything was quite controlled on pace. And the shoes felt pretty good. That's a session I should be able to do in any shoes. You don't really get a big squishing and bounce here with these shoes. Like the foam is a bit firmer than others, and it feels like that lower layer of foam is disproportionately present on the run. You can really feel it, and it maybe takes away quite a lot from the ride potentially. Like
They don't feel very nimble. Obviously they are quite big shoes, and when you are starting to drag your feet a little bit, that is noticeable, and just not sure that they're giving you enough bounce back to make up for that weight. Like, there are some big heavy super shoes out there, like the Hoka Cielo 1 or even the Alpha Fly 2, but they give you so much back in terms of the softness and bounciness of the foam, and that isn't really the case here. So you've got the weight, but you don't really get that massive amount of spring. So you can turn your feet over them quite nicely. They feel very low drop. So it's quite interesting, the idea that they've got this 8mm drop. I know earlier reviews said 2mm. I think it's because there's so much of the drop is concentrated in that tiny bit of a toe spring right at the end of the shoe. They are quite flat figuring actually, and that's nice for me on a run like that today when I'm hitting fairly sharp paces. I'm landing a bit more mid-foot, forefoot, but if I'm doing a longer race, I'll probably land a bit further back, and not sure I'll get quite enough rocker through off this shoe compared to others, but obviously that'd be different if you are landing on your forefoot naturally. So yeah, all around it was okay. Like, there's better feeling to the foam potentially in the first one. It doesn't feel quite so firm and flat. You get a little bit more bounce maybe, but it's not a big bouncy shoe. It's not that springy, and you do feel the weight a bit. So I'll be interested to see how it feels when I'm trying to hold a pace over a longer distance. It's okay today on those shorter reps. I was turning my feet over quite nicely, but I'm not sure how the shoe would feel if you're like 8k into a hard 10k and starting to really fall apart. It maybe just feels a little bit clunkier than some of the other super shoes out there.
So my first run in this shoe was a 7k run. I didn't have a lot of time in my lunch break to go out and do a long run in it. So I took it out for a 7k and did a load of intervals, short intervals of about 250 meters. I wasn't a massive fan of the previous Velociti Elite. I think it was fine. I think it felt like a very fast, old style shoe, but it didn't really give me anything in terms of performance gains from the plate or the foam that was in it. I do think this feels a little bit different than the first one. I definitely noticed the plate a little bit more in this when I was picking up the pace, and I also felt that the foam had a little bit more to it, a little bit more bounce, not loads, but I definitely think this is an improvement on the original Velociti Elite. Over the easy section of the run that I did, so running to the park to do my intervals, I was probably running at 5 minute 10, 5 minute 20 minute kilometers, and it felt okay. It's not a shoe designed for that. It's very much an old school style fast paced shoe, and at those paces that midsole just really doesn't offer anything back. It feels quite firm and doesn't feel particularly comfortable at those paces. When I picked up the pace and started hitting those intervals, that's when the shoe really kicks into gear. It is slightly heavier than the previous version, but once you start really moving forward and picking up the pace, you can feel the shoe kicking into gear, and at that point it did feel like that I found the sweet spot for this shoe over that run. Comparing it with other shoes though, I do think the performance benefits of this are limited in comparison to a lot of other shoes. So things like the Alpha Flies, the Vapor Flies of this world, the Asics Sky Paris, shoes like that, those all seem to do a lot more on the run than this shoe does. They feel a bit bouncier, they've got a little bit more propulsion, whereas this just feels a little bit more like an old school racing shoe, bit firmer. It's very responsive, but it's really designed for those runners that want a more conventional feel, and I think it will work for some runners like that. I think there's definitely benefits to this shoe for a certain type of runner that really wants that sort of traditional style fast shoe. But if you're used to using the more modern super shoes that have lots of new foams and stuff in, this is going to feel probably a little bit too firm and a little bit not as performance based as some of those shoes. However, I think it really, if you're putting it into the realms of super shoes, I think it sits quite low down. I think if this was classed as a training shoe and you're using it for your faster training sessions, a bit like the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4, I think it actually is quite a nice shoe. Pity that it's quite high, it's quite expensive for what it does, but that's what I would use this shoe for. I think I'd probably use it as a supportive shoe for my interval sessions and maybe fartleks, things like that, where I want to pick up the pace and I want a nice, fast, sharp shoe that does that. But other than that, I do think it did well at those intervals, but I don't think it's a particularly versatile shoe, and I think it's a bit of an acquired taste.
So for my first run, I've just done 6 miles, did a mixture of paces, some nice and easy, a couple miles a bit faster, some kind of middling pace, so everything from kind of my easy up through my marathon to my half marathon pace in those shoes. So I think the first thing you really notice when you put these shoes on for the first time is just how pronounced the rocker is. It's really like the toes disappear from under you. When you're walking in them, it really tilts you forward, and when you get moving, that sensation's exaggerated. What you've got is almost like it's like a nodule of the midsole foam under the ball of your foot, and that rolls really quickly into that kind of toe off. The rockering on this is more pronounced, I think, than many shoes I've run in recently or ever. It's, you know, it's really, really noticeable. I think this shoe for me performed better when I was up on my toes rather than rocking back on my heels. The other thing, I do think this is a punchy shoe, particularly when you're moving an easier to slower pace. I really feel there's quite a lot of energy coming back from that foam, more so than I think from the last Velociti Elite. Then when you go up the gears and you really start to drive from your kind of forefoot, sort of midfoot landings, that foam really kind of compacts actually, and it feels quite direct. This is a stiff old shoe as well. You know, that sort of rockering, that stiff carbon plate, I think you really notice it quite early and quite pronounced. It makes this shoe quite a punchy shoe actually, I think, in a very different way to some of the other super shoes. It's not so much of a kind of really sort of springy, kind of bouncy, energetic ride. It's more kind of stiff and rolling, and you're getting, you know, a lot from the rockering and the carbon plate, I feel. Well, that's how I felt in that first run.
Quick first run verdict then, and as I said, I enjoyed those early miles in the Under Armour Velociti Elite 2. My first impressions are that this is a step on from the original Velociti Elite, and it might well be Under Armour's best shoe to date, but it's still not quite up there with the best carbon racers based on those early miles that I've done. Comfort was good, there's a really unfussy fit, loads of room in the toe box, and I don't mind having a more traditional kind of more padded heel collars here. There's definitely more energy from that sort of two foam midsole versus the old Velociti. There's a real stiffness to the sort of carbon plate and that midsole generally, and that works with what is quite a pronounced rocker here, adding up to, for a generally kind of lively ride that gives you more though when you're up on your mid to forefoot really attacking your run with proper intent. It feels quite a lot different to other carbon racers, I think. It's definitely firmer and stiffer. It's notably heavier. There's a bit more shoe here on the foot than a lot of those carbon racers. In fact, only the Adidas Prime X2 Strung comes in heavier than this shoe. It's early in testing, but after that first run, I could see myself doing some sort of faster training runs in these. Interestingly, I think it'd be a good interval shoe, but I'm not that convinced that they'd be my first choice for all-out racing. That's not helped by the price either. The small price hike in the UK makes these shoes more expensive than the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris and the Adios Pro 3, even the Hoka Carbon Rocket X2, and I don't think I'd choose these above those shoes. I'd love to have seen Under Armour whack these in at like 200 or less and really get us thinking about whether or not this would be an option, a more cost-effective option. As ever, more testing though is needed in these shoes before we give our full verdict. These are just early thoughts after one initial run, but at the moment, while I enjoyed the early miles in the Under Armour Elite 2, I think it has some work to do to convince me that it's up there with the best racing super shoes. But we will do testing and find out.
So my early verdict on the Under Armour Velociti Elite 2 is improvement on the previous version. I definitely think that Under Armour has listened to what people said about that previous version and made some adjustments to this, which I think work quite well. I think the midsole's a bit better. I think there's a little bit more pop in this shoe, despite the extra weight. But I would say that from that first run, it still feels to me like a very specific type of shoe. Some runners may love it because of that firmness, and it's a very responsive as a result. And especially at those quicker paces, it really does pick up, and you can feel a little bit of a kick from that plate. But for me, after that first run, what I do feel is that it's going to struggle to compete with a lot of the other shoes out there that are really doing a lot of this stuff better because of the foam, bouncier foam, softer foams, and just better carbon plate placing. Definitely, for me, feels more like a conventional shoe. That a lot of people, for the price, are probably not going to be too happy with. But for some people, it may be the perfect shoe because it's not the same as most of the super shoes on the market at the moment.
So very early verdict, obviously, on the Velociti Elite after just one run. It was an enjoyable enough run today, but I feel like you're just not getting enough bounce for the weight of the shoe here. Like, I had one of my favourite new carbon shoes this year is the Hoka Cielo X1, which is obviously a pretty heavy shoe as well, but you get so much bounce from that midsole. It's such a fantastic ride, really, for anything. I've done very short reps in that shoe, going up to 24-mile long runs, and it always feels really good. You just don't have that bouncy feeling with the foams that Under Armour uses. It's a different feeling, a super shoe, to lots of others. You've got a firmer feel, even from the Peba-based, and especially in combination with the flow foam all round. Like, it's not a bad thing, but it's not necessarily a super shoe feeling. I'm not sure you're getting enough dynamic energy return here to make it comparable to other super shoes on the market. Did enjoy using it for those shorter intervals today. I do think it's a shoe that I'd probably favour forefoot strikers a bit. You've got that deep wedge of the foam there, you've got this very dramatic toe spring and what feels like quite a low drop shoe all round. As someone who heel strikes generally and over longer races, I feel like I probably might not enjoy this shoe so much because you haven't got that full length rocker onto the forefoot that you have with some other shoes or shoes of a higher drop like the first version of this shoe. But I did enjoy it today, like I say, running those 400 metre reps. But even then, you can certainly feel the kind of extra weight you have here compared to lots of other shoes out there. It's also quite a stable shoe. I think it felt okay on slow paces to and from the track as well. I think it's going to be a pretty durable shoe, and like the first version, it will be a shoe that you can use for lots of different runs. But all those are kind of positives to training shoes or trainer racers, super trainers, that kind of thing. They're not what I'm looking for in a bona fide super shoe. I want all-out pace. I want a really bouncy, fast ride. I want an aggressive ride. And with the Velociti Elite 2, I just don't think you're getting that as much as with other shoes. And the price is comparable to those shoes. So Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris straight away is a shoe that is a little bit cheaper or the same price, and it is just a fantastic all-round shoe. It's much lighter, it's bouncier. That's the kind of competition this shoe is going up against. So on its own, perfectly enjoyable shoe you could use a lot, pretty fast shoe. But if you're going to price it to go up against the very best shoes on the market, it's only one run, but there are shoes that I would be picking up ahead of this shoe just because of their faster ride, lighter designs, just all-round more racy feels. So yeah, I enjoyed the first run in the Under Armour. Looking forward to doing some runs in it. I do want to see how it feels when I'm holding a sustained pace for a period, but so far it hasn't really shone compared to what else we've seen in the carbon market already this year and in years past. So that's the first run review of the Under Armour Velociti Elite 2. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Please do like, subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.